Welcome everybody to Cooking with Poppy. Today we're going to be cooking a couple of New York strips, and I'm going to be sharing 7 tips to help you bring your steak to the next level. And the very first one is to pull your steak out of the refrigerator and let it come up to room temperature before you cook it. These two have been out for about a half an hour. Tip number 2 is right before you put them in the pan to cook, let's go ahead and give them a good heavy seasoning. You can lose up to 30-40% of your seasoning when it's sticking to the pan, so don't be afraid to really put it on there. Make sure you rub it in, really get it into the meat. Don't forget to get the edges. You eat the edges of the steak, so you need to season the edges of the steak. Let's go ahead and get some sea salt on there and some black pepper and really give it a good rub in. That's really starting to look good. I think we're just about ready to put these in the pan. Okay, we got the pans coming up to temperature. Let's go ahead and give it a nice helping of olive oil in there. When the olive oil in the pan is hot enough, you're going to start to see a little bit of smoke. That'll tell you that you're ready to start cooking. All right, my oil is smoking a little bit. We're just about ready to go and ready for tip number 3. When you put your steaks in the pan, always lay them away from you. That way you don't get splashed with oil. Just lay it into the pan away from you, just like that. You should hear a nice sizzle as you lay the steak into the pan. If not, pull it out and wait for the pan to come up to temperature. You don't want to boil it in oil. You want to get a nice sear on it. That brings us to tip number 4. You really want to get a good sear on your steak. You want good color. Nice crust on it before you turn it over. No color, no crust, no flavor. Now that's a nice brown crust on there. And it's starting to smell really good. You can see the smoke coming off. You can hear the sizzle. You know it's getting a nice cook on it. And that leads us to tip number 5, aromatics. I'm going to be using rosemary and thyme. I'm going to put a couple of sprigs of rosemary in here. Rosemary is going to give it a peppery, little bit of a lemony taste. I'm going to turn these over about every minute. Then I'm going to check the temperature. Don't want to overdo them. I'm looking for 145 to 150. Looks like we're getting pretty close. I'm going to go ahead and put in some thyme. And let's give these a quick flip. Always laying away from you. And that brings us to tip number 6, butter. Go ahead and put about a half a stick of butter in here. We're going to let it get nice and brown, and then we're going to baste the steak as it comes up to temperature. Let's just go ahead and keep basting those steaks right up until the time they come up to temp, which should be about 145, 150. And it looks like we're just about there. And that's going to bring us to the absolute most important tip of cooking a steak, and that's letting the steak rest. I'm going to spoon a little bit more of this butter on these steaks, and then I'm going to let them rest for probably 10 minutes.
That looks yummy.
Thanks, girls. So the steaks have been resting for about 10 minutes. So why don't we go ahead and slice one and see how we did this time. And there you go. If you follow these 7 tips that I have given you here today, I promise you, your steak's going to come out like that. Thanks for coming, everybody. And as always,
Like and subscribe.